Hello, everybody. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about food chains and food webs and give you a little bit more explanation about it to help you with some of those cards that you've been working on in science. So, the first thing that we're going to look at is a food chain. So, a food chain is this top one right here. Okay, there's a plant, there's a rabbit, and there is a fox right there. So the food chain shows how the energy from each thing is going into the um, uh, next animal. So first of all, we start out with a plant, right? And the plant has its own energy. It's been using its energy to grow, to become bigger, and that energy then gets eaten by the rabbit. So the rabbit now has energy inside of it, and it's been growing and moving around and stuff like that. And then the fox comes along, and that energy from the rabbit is then transferred into the fox. So a food chain shows the transfer of energy in a line, in a row here, okay? So from plant to the rabbit to the fox, which is different from a food web, because a food web is going to show how all plants and animals are interconnected within a system. Okay, so here's a food web. So as you can see here, there's plants down below, there's maybe seeds, berries, that type of thing. So the food web shows how all of these things are connected. So there's all these things down here that are eating the grass and the seeds and the berries, and then their energy is being transferred into the foxes, hawks and owls, snakes, and that type of thing. So there's many things that are, eating birds. The mice is being eaten by both the fox and the hawk and owls. Same for the squirrels, same for rabbits. So all of these things are kind of interconnected. Over here, you're going to have insects, which are going to be eaten by different birds, which will then also be eaten by different foxes and hawks and owls. Snakes may actually eat them. All of these arrows are showing the energy that is being transferred from one animal to the next, or from a plant to an animal. Okay, so this is a food web, which is much different than a food chain. A food chain just shows one line, okay, one system. This one shows how everything in an ecosystem is interdependent on one another. So if you take something out, let's say that we lose all the squirrels and all the rabbits in an ecosystem, maybe they get really sick and they die off. Maybe man comes in and shoots them all. It's really going to affect what the foxes and the hawks and owls can eat. So now they might only have mice that are left and some birds for them to eat. Well, that doesn't give them very much of a variety for their diet, which, makes sense. I mean, I love pizza, but I don't want to eat it for breakfast and lunch and supper. I need a variety of things in my diet to keep me healthy. And so what happens then is maybe the foxes and hawks and owls might die off. Sometimes they might move on because they're looking for different types of food, which if the predators leave, then other predators might move in, or you're going to have an overabundance of mice, which can be bad. Mice are cute, but I don't want them moving into my house because there's so many of them. So you really have to keep a balance in an ecosystem in order to have everything moving smoothly. All right, so let's move on. So I wanted to look at producers right here. So producers make their own food. They're typically plants, right? They're going to use photosynthesis. So they're going to use the sun, water, nutrients in the soil, carbon dioxide that we breathe out to make oxygen and glucose so that they can continue to grow. So producers are plants. They produce their own food. That's why they're called producers. Whereas consumers have to consume food in order to get their energy in order to grow. So we, man, is a consumer because we can't make our own food. I can't lay out in the sun and make energy to make myself grow, right? I don't have the same things that plants do in order to help me to do that. So I am a consumer. I have to consume food in order to in order for me to grow. So there's 3 different types of consumers. There's a herbivore, a carnivore, and an omnivore. And you guys should be pretty familiar with what these are because you probably learned this in E1. So an herbivore is something that eats plants, like rabbits. Rabbits would be an herbivore. A carnivore is something that eats meat, like a wolf or a tiger. And then omnivores would eat both plants and meat. So like humans, I like a good salad every once in a while, and I like a good steak. So we are omnivores. So we are the three different types of, those are the three different types of consumers. Now in a food chain, okay, there are consumers that kind of fall into an order. So for example, I have a producer here. I have a grass, right? Maybe some seeds are on that grass, and this little mouse comes along and he's going to eat some of these seeds. He is a primary consumer. So the plant was a producer because it's using photosynthesis to make its own food in order for it to grow. And then this mice comes along and it's the first thing, primary, usually it means first thing to start eating on it. So it's a consumer, okay? Well, then this snake comes along, it's going to be the secondary consumer. So it's the second thing to come along, and it's going to eat the mouse. Well, then there's a third consumer that comes along, a hawk, and that hawk is going to eat the snake. So there's the first thing that was eating the producer, which was the mouse. Then the second animal comes along, the secondary consumer, and he eats the mouse. And then the hawk comes along, and he's going to eat the snake, so he's the third consumer. And then let's say that we had a wolf that came along, and he would be the quaternary consumer, the fourth consumer. So if I had a picture of a wolf here and the energy from the hawk was going into the wolf, then he would be the quaternary consumer, the fifth consumer. So that would be quite a long food chain right there, but that's how our ecosystems work. That's how the world works. When it comes to how animals get their food, which is kind of a cool thing when you think about it, how everything is is interdependent on one another, and how having to take care of the earth is very important, because if we start to lose certain species, then that really affects the food chains and the food webs in each ecosystem. Now, there are other things. Obviously, you're going to know what a predator is. A predator is something that eats something else. The prey is what is being eaten. So you think of a snake, in the food chain. The snake was the predator of the mouse, and the mouse was the prey. Same thing, a predator can also be prey for something else. In that food chain, we had the snake that was going to be eaten by the hawk. And so the hawk was the predator of the snake, and the snake was the prey. Now, in this picture up here, it shows how decomposers, there's two other things here. There's decomposers and scavengers. Now, as these things are dying, okay, or laying there, you guys have all seen a dead deer laying across or laying by the side of the road. There's decomposers that are coming in, and they're decomposing all of this rotting flesh. Okay, so there might be bugs, there might be worms, there might be fungus that is coming in, and it's all using that rotting meat to break down and eliminate that dead body. So I know that sounds really gross, but it's kind of, that's kind of what happens. We've all seen a fly that, if you come across, a dead deer or a dead rabbit, then there's flies all over it, and they will lay their eggs, and the eggs will hatch, and they will become maggots, and those maggots will all eat on that dead flesh and break it down so that it's eliminated. The meat is eliminated, and everything else, all that nutrients that was in there goes back down into the ground. Scavengers might also come along too. Everybody has seen a crow picking at a dead body, or one of the dead animals alongside of the road. You might have a vulture that would come in, on the in the grasslands. Typically, in Africa, you might see a vulture that would come down and be picking at a dead carcass that maybe a lion has killed and eaten on, and then has left the remains there. Well, then the vultures come in and they will pick at this dead body. So it all helps to break everything down, so that now all of that nutrients from those decomposers and those dead bodies goes back into nutrients that the plants use in order to back into that photosynthesis thing. They use the nutrients from the soil to help them grow, to make photosynthesis, and enable them to grow even more. So, which then again goes, all that energy goes back into the field mice or the rabbits or that type of thing. So it's really cool how food chains and food webs work. I hope this has helped you a little bit in explaining some of those terms a little bit more. Again, if you have any questions, you can always email me, or you can always talk to the teachers, and they can always email me as well. Okay, thanks, bye.